Well, good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here. Thanks for that summary of my life. You did good. I didn't even remember those vote total numbers, believe it or not. That was good, Jeff. It's great to be here this morning, and I'm really happy to pinch hit for Jason. My heart goes out to him as he mourns his father's death and deals with all the details related to that. That's a big deal, and it's no matter what the circumstances were, or if you're prepared or not, it's never an easy task. So I'm happy to step in and help out a little bit this morning. And I'm sure all of you felt like the conference agenda would really be complete if you could just hear from one more regulator. So happy to provide that for you too. I told Kay that she could title my speech Tomi Part 2, twice as old and half as pretty. But at least I'll be really boring. You do realize I'm a utility regulator, so the lights better go up and there better be a lot of coffee on the table, or everyone's going to go just night-night really quick, nice little nap here this morning. But seriously, though, after listening to Tomi, I thought, yeah, I do have a couple things I want to talk about this morning and reinforce some of what she said and some of what I think, how it applies to what we need to take to heart and do a better job of here in North Dakota, and also for you all in your industry in supporting Lignite. I really appreciated Tomi's message yesterday, her passion for our region, for our values, for our communities, for our work ethic, our independence, for our family values, all of which she described as forgotten America and the forgotten Americans. That really, really struck a chord with me, as I'm sure it did with all of you. And I just left with thinking one thing, damn right, we are so apologetic about who we are and what we stand for, and we really need to stop doing that. We are a huge asset for our country. And so I also want to join Tomi in thanking all of you, because you are kind of the core of all that and represent so much of what she talked about as being the values that mean so much to our country and our nation and to the world. I want to thank all of the miners in the audience, all the suppliers, all the tradesmen and women, the legislators even. Yes, the other fellow elected officials, the utility employees. It's quite a diverse audience, and all of you go to work every day and help make our communities what they are. And especially those of you working in the energy industry and the coal industry. This is an industry that is a source of reliable, affordable electricity every single day, but most especially at times when we need it the most. You guys step to the plate. Those coal resources, I see this, I hear this at the conferences I attend. Usually those resources come in and save the day when everything else isn't working. So we have to do what we can to defend and maintain those resources, and you guys are on the front lines doing that every single day. Your industry is providing that valuable resource, and you're doing it with an incredible record of environmental stewardship. I've been out to the mines. I've observed the contemporaneous reclamation firsthand, and it is quite a sight to see. I hope that Tomi does come back here and bring America out to those mine sites so that American can see what you guys are all about and the extent to which you go to protect the environment. I've been through long hearings and learned a lot about the process of alluvial floor designations, soil science determination, crop production to success, and all of the countless things, countless measurements and standards that the industry has to maintain and is upheld to. So really, you should be patting yourselves on the back. Your commitment to restoring our environment to as near as possible its original state, and in some cases better than its original state, is something to be proud of. And more than that, I really want to thank you for what you do to support our communities, your families, your kids' sports teams, volunteering in your church, helping your friends and families when you need it, for doing your part to maintain the quality of life and the value that we have in North Dakota and North Dakota communities. People on the coast really don't realize it, but the heartland is a great strength for America. And yeah, we do cling to our guns and our religion because we know that they are worth fighting for. They are the fundamental rights on which this country was founded, and we have to defend them. So we know that fight is a fight we're taking, and we've got to double down our efforts to do that. If you travel out of North Dakota at all, and I assume many of you do, or if you've ever lived on one of the coasts, you know how true Tammy's assessment of the East Coast and West Coast elitist attitude to the plains of the heartland really is. Not long after graduating from UND back in 1990, I moved to Washington, D.C. for a few years. I was part of the original brain drain of North Dakota. And then in 1995, I was offered an opportunity, as Jeff said, to move back and work for Governor Ed Schaefer. My East Coast friends were shocked that I would even consider doing that. They were totally dumbfounded. They could not imagine why I would want to return to the middle of nowhere, the middle of a very cold nowhere. One of my friends actually said to me, "Really, Julie, you're going to go work back to North Dakota to work for the governor of North Dakota? That's like working for the mayor of Baltimore." And I thought, well, mayor of Baltimore, governor of North Dakota is what I love. It's where my family is, and that's where I want to be. So I moved back, and I've never regretted that. It was the best decision I ever made. And what I learned, I had never aspired to work in politics. I graduated in journalism and wanted to be a writer. And I had never even thought about entering the political arena until Ed Schaefer invited me back to North Dakota to work for him as his communications director. And so it was kind of a surprise to me how much I enjoyed and appreciated that job. And what I learned and came to deeply appreciate in working side by side with Ed Schaefer for 5 years was that government really matters. It matters a whole lot to each and every person. It affects the amount of money we earn. It affects the kinds of products we can buy, the price of those products, the times and the places where we can shop. Government determines what our kids learn in school. It affects every aspect of our communication and transportation systems. It defines our marriages and what those mean by law. It determines where we can travel to some extent. Government even affects the time of day. And it's the hard truth is that government can't exist if good people sit on the sidelines comfortably. So Tomi is right. Now that more than ever, we do need to use our voices to fight for and defend the values, the rights, and the policies that we believe are important and true in our communities, in our state, and in our nation. So one of those areas, obviously, that we need to be more bold and more loud is in defending our energy sector and our energy industry. North Dakota's energy sector is a vital part of our economy, and everybody, whether you're in the industry or not, is impacted a great deal by the energy industry in our state. We see this at the Public Service Commission in our areas of responsibility, and we saw how things kind of flattened out when the price of oil dropped. And we also have seen things pick up again in the last couple of years. We're seeing a lot of activity in the whole pipeline sector and gas sector right now. In the last 7 years, or 5 to 7 years, I guess, since I've been on the commission, we've provided permits for $8 billion with a B dollars worth of new energy-related infrastructure in our state. So if you can imagine the multiplying effect of that infrastructure, the construction of it, and the operation of that infrastructure long-term in North Dakota, it's really, really astounding. You can see just by our small sliver at the PSC what an impact that is having in our economy. We're seeing electric transmission lines and wind generation facilities also remaining really active. And we're also seeing how the changes in the coal industry are affecting that industry. The coal industry has really been under attack in the last decade. And we've seen how the impact of the retirement of coal generation facilities is changing the electricity that's on the grid. When I go to our national meetings or when I work through the MISO organization, they show the pie charts of coal used to be about 75% of the electricity generation resource, and that sliver has shrunk to less than half, and the predictions are for it to go down more. So this is an area where I want to talk to you just briefly this morning, and I'll wrap up about an area where I think your industry needs to be more active. And at the risk of getting too technical or into the regulatory weeds, I want to talk a little bit about the regional transmission organizations, sometimes referred to as RTOs. So no eyes glazing over, stay with me here. This is really exciting stuff. For years, your industry has been fighting battles on the legislative and the regulatory front in the halls of Congress, state legislatures, and the courts. These were really necessary battles, and they consumed huge amounts of your time and your resources. All the while, regional transmission organizations were hard at work organizing these huge markets through which all the electricity being produced is sold. We can compare this to like the Sam's Club or the Amazon of electricity. This is where everyone shops. These markets, they set the price and determine, based on price, which power is actually purchased and used to meet the demand in real time, every minute of every day. All of the utilities bid their resources into the market, hoping to make the greatest return and purchase resources back to the market to serve their customers, hopefully at the least possible price. All of this sounds like a very typical market. But here's the challenge for baseload resources, as I've come to learn, and I've studied and asked a lot of questions over the last 5 years about this very issue to try to better understand what's happening and what might be some possible solutions for you all. The market price is based of the electricity sold in the market is based on variable costs. So that's any resource's fuel cost. Well, some of your competitors have no fuel cost. Their fuel is the wind, so their fuel cost is zero. It's tough to compete with a fuel cost of zero. So the fixed costs, the cost of your plant, and all of those fixed costs for both wind and coal and all baseload, all resources, that's borne by the ratepayers, whoever owns that resource, pay for that. So ratepayers who are supporting a coal facility are supporting the cost of that coal facility, plus they're dealing with the resources being sold into the market at a cost that's higher than a lot of the other resources that are out there. So it's not getting selected as much. That makes the fixed costs more expensive because they're not being spread over more generation, more megawatts sold. It also means that for those resources that are being paid for by the utilities, those utility customers are paying for that resource, but other utility customers, by the nature of how the electric grid works, electricity goes on it and it's used, so you really can't define who's using it. The customers, all customers are benefiting from that electricity that's on the market at any given time, that's on the grid. So there are some customers out there that are benefiting for attributes that coal resources and other baseload resources provide to the grid that are not reflected or paid for in that variable cost. So everyone's benefiting, but everybody isn't paying. And that's where I think the gap is that needs to be fixed. And that's where I hope that you guys all engage. I'm serving on a committee of MISO called the, first of all, there's all kinds of stakeholder groups in the MISO organization. They make their decisions based on input from the stakeholder groups. The organization of MISO states, that's regulators like myself and all of the MISO states, we're one of those organizations. We aren't the controlling folks, even though our members, the people that we serve, ultimately make MISO possible because they're the ratepayers. Without ratepayers, MISO wouldn't exist. But OMS, the organization of MISO states regulators, we do not have any sort of a controlling vote or interest in the MISO organization. We're one stakeholder group. There's renewable stakeholders, there's transmission owners, there's independent power producers, there's environmental groups, there's a wide list of stakeholder groups. All of them provide advisory information to the MISO board that ultimately makes the decisions. As a member of OMS and on the executive committee now, I serve on that stakeholder group, and I do have a voice, And I do use that voice to try to bring some of these issues to light, but I'm the lone voice. I'll tell you, there's nobody else saying this. And I would really, really hope that your organization would step to the plate and provide that voice there too. I'm not saying it's going to change things overnight. I'm not saying it's an easy organization to make a difference in, because it's huge and it's bureaucratic. But you have to be at the table. You have to be there defending your interests, defending your attributes, talking about what it is that you provide that nobody else does, and why that should be rewarded by the market and the price that the electricity provided by coal is sold at. So that's the area where I'd be happy to talk to folks with the Lignite Energy Council or any of your individual mining companies. All, as far as I understand, because I've talked to MISO about this, all of you are able to have a seat at the table. You do have to pay a membership fee, and I'd be happy to help work with you through MISO to start to make that happen, so that you can be at the table, hear the conversations, and try to find your own ways to provide a more equitable marketplace in which you can all compete. In conclusion, I do want to say that I know my colleagues, Randy Chrisman and Brian Crocious, are also super strong supporters of your industry. You all know that. You know them. You know they're hard at work on your behalf and on North Dakotans' behalf. We understand two things. We understand the value of your resource as an electricity provider in our country, and we understand your value to our state as an economic engine. So we stand here ready to work with you to provide a strong and bright future for the lignite industry for many years to come. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you this morning. Appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your day.
That was a real fine Marco Rubio impersonation there. Grab a little sip during the speech. I like that. All right, folks. I left my script on the table. Boy, emerging markets, isn't it, Jonathan? Emerging markets, yes. And we're going to hear from this guy, Jonathan. Boy, I'm some MC, right? Jonathan Fortner is in this next group. Have you heard Jonathan Fortner? Have you met Jonathan Fortner, the new government affairs guy? He spent some time in Minnesota, so the guy has been through the battles. You know that. Jonathan's going to be a part of this next panel coming up after this. We're also going to hear a little bit about the potential for rare earth minerals and just all kinds of good stuff in the next session. We're going to have a bit of an extended break here. We're going to start the next session at 9:15, and it's currently, let me see. Who's got the time, folks? 8:45, so you get about a 30-minute break to talk to the exhibitors. Please be back here at 9:15 and have some fun networking.